Hi, I'm Mark and this is Foothill Paint Fabrication. We're going to be getting back onto the 1950 Chevy pickup rear fenders doing the patch panels. So this will be part 2. Hopefully there won't be a part 3. We can get through this before it gets too long. But we're going to be fitting them and then getting them welded on today. So let's jump right to it. Okay, I've got the patch panel shaped pretty well. Got this fender over here was pretty messed up on the radius, so we got that worked back out. Now we're just going to take the paint down all the way around here and then on both of them. So we'll zip through this real quick and then we'll get to figuring out what we're going to cut off, what we're going to keep, what we're going to cut off, and figure out the patch panel size. All right. Okay, so now we're going to lay out where we want, how much of the fender we can save and what we have to cut off and put the new sheet metal on with. So I'll use a Sharpie and a straight edge, and first I'll pick out my height, how much I can save. Now looking at the back here, I can see that the rust comes up just a little above my line here. So I'm going to pick a spot. Try to keep it semi-parallel. So we're going to say it's going to be about here, and then I'll just take a measurement. It doesn't really matter, but it's about 2 3/4. We'll put a mark right there, and we'll see if we can wrap this flexible ruler around here so we can get around the radius. Up there, and we'll just clamp this since I don't have 3 hands. Working by yourself, you got to come up with interesting ways to do things. So we're going to go across here, and I'm going to continue to bend it around, keep it on the same plane. And I'm going to bend it around here, just like that. Now we have to pick, the hole is right here that somebody punched with a screwdriver or whatever. And then we've got a hole right here where some rust was and there was one of the spot welds. So I'm going to pick, that's another spot weld location, you can tell by the low spot. So I'm probably going to come it looks good behind it, so I'm going to come down at an angle, something like this. So we're going to go ahead and get the vertical over here. The lip underneath changes shape, so we want to stay just inside of that. No reason complicating our life if we can help it. All right, we got that cut off, and it's really fitting pretty well. Pretty happy about this radius right here. It's sticking out just a little bit here, but it's not like I have to force it to put it in there. Put it on my knee a little bit here. Try if we can't flatten that out on my thigh here a little bit. But it's really fitting well. I'm pretty happy about that. Kind of thinking about going straight over right now after all that talk about radius and down. I think it's going to make, I should probably radius it down. I always make things harder on myself than I need to. There's quite a bit of lip on these, So there's going to be plenty of strength right there. So I think I will go straight down, or straight across rather, and just weld it right around there. I can get to it really easy. You don't want, I want to make sure it's strong enough so it doesn't have any stress on it to crack like that. But we'll weld it from both sides and grind it smooth and make sure we got that done right. So yeah, that'll be great. And then we'll get a radius on this thing. And this is the side that takes all the stress. So I'm going to cut this off, cut that radius in there, and then we're going to hold it back up here, and then we're just going to keep fine-tuning that until until I'm happy with it, and then we'll straighten this line out, make sure it's nice and straight, and then when I'm happy with the way the patch panel looks, then we're going to hold it up here, and of course we have to remember that this is sitting that much deeper, lower than the fender. So we'll add to that, because this will need to go up a little bit. So we have to, whatever dimension we get here, I have to go up a little bit from there. So we'll make that, adjustment, and then we'll see where we're at. So let's go ahead and get this chopped off here real quick, and then I'll bring you right back. All right, well, we've got it cut down. The radius is over here. It's fitting really well. The last thing I want to do is I took a measurement from the other fender, and to the center of the radius on this body line to the bottom of the lip is 5.5 inches exactly. It's 5.5 parallel all the way around until it rolls back up into the fender well. So we want to just take a few measurements to make sure that this panel is going to be at the right height. So I'm checking to make sure that it's up in there tight. It's sitting where it's supposed to be. Got the Sharpie line on there so I can scribe this. So what I'm going to do, it'd be nice if I could just offset that distance with some sort of scribe. I was looking around here for if I had anything, but I don't, and I don't want to make anything. So we're just going to scribe it. We're going to cut to that line, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fit it and then keep grinding up until it fits perfect. So if I cut to this scribe line, it'll be too long because this is setting down because of the lip. And then all we have to do is just keep fine tuning it until it fits perfectly. Okay, so here's the back side of the fender, a good shot of it. So we've made all the rust. There's a little bit up here, but I can feel it with my finger. It's just surface rust. So we're looking good. Here's that crack on the other side I was telling you about. So we just cleared that crack because that's not falling off. So it looks pretty good. Hopefully we can get the other one to fit, and we'll be good to go. So holding this up here, I know this distance from the center of that radius to the bottom right here should be 5.5 inches. So all I have to do is get that lined up good and then make it fit. So we should be just a little long. So if I fit that up underneath like so, it actually fits pretty well. So what we're going to do is grind up to it slowly. I'm going to take some measurements real quick, and then we're going to get this radius cut in, and then I'll switch over to a grinding wheel, and then we'll see about getting this line sweetened up so that it matches this one exactly. But already I can tell that we're looking really good. We're going to have to straighten this one out here just a little bit because this is a little flatter than the radius on here, and then we'll be good to go. All right, I've got the panel clamped up on here. It's slightly overlapped here, and it's very close here. We've got it correct on the bottom. And if I measure, we're right at 5.5 on the body line. So we're looking really good on this. So it's actually more needs to come off here than over here. So that's why it's important to get some sort of reference line to measure back to, because once you cut that other piece off, you've got nothing to go by except how you think it looks. It may look good to you until you try to put it on the car or truck in this case, and then you're like, it doesn't fit. The lines don't line up, or bolt holes don't line up, or something like that. So always find a good reference line. In this case, there's a body line here, but I could have easily taken a square and drawn a line across the fender, made my own reference line, and then before I cut anything off, measured down and took a few notes on a piece of paper to telling me it was this many inches from there to there, and that's my line. And then when I go to put the panel back on, I know if I hit that measurement, we're good to go. So I'm going to scribe this again, and I'm going to trim the fender. This panel has got a nice, sweet, straight line on here, so I don't want to grind the patch panel to the fender. I want to try to grind the fender to the patch panel. So we're just going to scribe that up real quick, and then we'll get the grinder out and see if we can't get this to match up really well with very little gap. All right, well, after a lot of fiddling and grinding on both the patch panel and the fender, it fits really well. There's a bigger gap in a few spots that I would like, but it's still really tight. I'm not going to mess with it too much more because then I'll just end up chasing it. So down on the corners where they meet, it's really tight on this side, down underneath that clamp right there. But on this side, I got lazy and I didn't mark my cut. I just kind of let the blade go across, and as you can see, I got a gap there. So I have to fix that. I'm not going to weld that in. I'm going to actually cut a little piece and weld it on there, and then I'll cut it to fit, and I'll have to fix my mistake. So the temptation is to just you know, start building up a bunch of weld there, but that gap's just way too big. So my mistake, getting in a hurry, the cutoff wheel was angled up. I thought it was flat, and instead of looking around the corner and scribing a line, I just kind of finished the cut across there, and it was a mistake. So now I got to fix it. Okay, I got my mistake fixed over here on the side, and the seam is really pretty tight. It's not perfect, but it's I'm really happy with it. So it should weld up pretty good. So what I'll do is I'm going to tack it, since this curve is kind of hard to duplicate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tack it in every location that it's flush, and then push out to get the other ones where they need to be, and just simply work my way around. So I'm going to start over here on this curved portion and get some tacks in, and then just move over, and then maybe hit the corner over here, and then fill in the middle. So we'll get it all tacked together, blow it off with some air to cool it back down, and then we'll just, once I'm sure it's in a good spot and looking good, and then I'll just start welding it. Just short tacks all the way around, back and forth, to stop distortion and overheating the metal, and possibly causing burn through. So let's get some tacks on it and then see how it comes out. All right, so I don't like to trust my fingers. They'll lie to you, make you think something's flush when it's not. So I use a straight edge, and I can tell down that right here it's perfect. So we're going to hit a tack right there. And then we're just going to keep playing with it and getting tacks in. Just going to grab the hammer and tap that in a little bit. On the curve, I can't use a straight edge, so I just have to use your fingers. All right, so we're just gonna keep doing that all the way around. We'll time lapse this real quick, and then hopefully we'll get it all on there good. And then if I'm happy with it, then we'll just go ahead and get them all welded in. Okay, it looks pretty good. I'm going to check a few things. Might need to hammer it around a little bit before we do the final weld. But it's looking pretty good. A little low right in this area. And once it's looking pretty good. A little burn through right there. I'm going to have to back that up with a piece of copper or something, and then weld that, pull some of the heat out of it. Gap was a little bit bigger than I liked right there. Other than that, looks good. So I'm going to just check it out real quick off camera, do some more tacks in between, and then get it ready, and then we'll be on to grinding it smooth. So I'll bring you back after that. Okay, we've got everything stitch welded all the way around here. There's maybe a few spots left to go, but we still have the edges where the two pieces of sheet metal come together. Now, if you start welding along there, all you're going to do is burn back and keep burning back. So a good trick is to clamp a piece of sheet metal about the same thickness on there, as get the clamp really close, and what that's going to do is you're going to end up welding right over onto that sheet metal. And then we're going to take the grinder and just grind that weld back and pop that little piece of sheet metal off there. So it's just going to give you a place to run out when you're welding. And it also helps hold it together. So we're going to get in there and we're going to weld it, start here where it's cool, and then work our way back. Instead of working that way, the heat's going to run out in front of us. So we're going to start here and just tack it and get a nice little tack there, and then we can pull the clamps away and then just cool it off a little bit and then hit it again. So it didn't burn back. We actually just welded that together. And sometimes you can just bend this off, but what I'll do is I'll take the cutoff wheel and I'll cut that and then just pop it right off there. But I need to get that welded up in a couple other little spots, and this is ready to start grinding. Okay, so we've got it welded all the way around. I think I got all the pinholes and everything's filled. I started grinding on it. It pulled in a little bit, welding, so I had to dolly the weld back out so it was flat, so I could grind it. These little spots are left to grind. I'm not going to bore you with me grinding, but hang on to your grinding wheels when they get small. This one's actually not as small as I like to use. So when I wear these grinding wheels down really small, I still hang on to them because I use it to get in. For one, it gives me more control. Another, I can use it on the edge like this, and it's a smaller circumference, so I don't have to worry about going onto the fender and the patch panel and going back and forth like this. If you go like this, then you're bouncing off onto the metal on each side, and then you'll make it too thin. So what I try to do, let me swing the camera around here a little bit. So what I'll try to do is hold the grinder like this so the radius is just hitting the weld. And I try not to bounce up back and forth. It's going to happen, but if you're careful and you watch it closely, sometimes I'll turn the wheel right on its edge and carefully grind along like that, or run at an angle like this, just to make sure that I'm just hitting the weld and not the sheet metal on each side. Then once the rough grinding, pardon me, is done, then I'll switch to a sanding disc or a flapper disc, probably a sanding disc because it gives me a little more control. And then we may have to hammer on it a little bit, push it here and there. But other than that, it's looking really good. The backside, I got 100% penetration almost everywhere. I only had 2 or 3 spots to hit. So we're going to hit a quick sand on the inside. Always treat the inside of the fender, if you can reach it, almost as good as the outside. Because if it's in a spot like this where it's going to get wet, it's going to have some other stuff up against it. If it's inside a trunk, there could be water inside there. So if there's a ledge, then the water's going to run down and hang out. And if you didn't weld it all the way through, then you've got a crack that's taken on water. So it's best to weld with 100% penetration, especially when you can't get through to the other side. And then treat it as a 100% weld. Don't leave any pinholes. Go back, after you grind it, if you see something, put a light on the back side and see if you see any light coming through. Weld each one of those so you have a complete weld all the way from one end to the other, all the way from the edges to each edge, and get it completely welded together. That way this whole piece of sheet metal turns into one with no basically cracks that you've left in there. So I'm going to finish grinding this up, then we're going to hit it with the sanding disc and see how it looks, and then I'll bring you back and we'll take a look at it. Okay, I've got all the pinholes welded up, just shined a light on the back side to make sure there was absolutely no pinholes at all. Got those done. Both sides have been ground. Obviously the inside of the fender, I don't spend a tremendous amount of time over there, but I do want it smooth. It is a little low in a few spots. I'll hammer that out before we even think about putting body filler on. But as far as the patch panel goes, both of them are done. They came up really well. I was really happy about it. We're going to move on to making the braces that were spot welded on the backside for where the running boards go. Before I do that, just talk a little bit about my welder. I've got a Miller 175. It's 220 volt welder. Welding this thin material, I fluctuate, but I run it pretty low. I'm running 024 wire, solid core. The gas is 75-25. That's 75% argon, 25% CO2, carbon dioxide. If you run pure carbon dioxide, you get a little more pitting, and actually pure CO2 actually runs hotter. So with the exact same settings, same wire, same feed, same everything, it will weld hotter. In this instance, obviously welding thin sheet metal with a small gap in between, you want to run cool but good penetration. So on this particular weld, I was running 1.5 volts. The wire speed was just right around 40. I run a little hotter when I'm doing a blind patch where I can't get to the backside if I need to. So I'll push a little harder and get a little more penetration, but it does get tricky because you burn through so easily. It's just the way it goes. So you got to fiddle with some scrap and just practice until you feel you're comfortable, and then just take your time. Once you got your spot welds in, let it cool, get your air hose out there, and after a weld, just hit it with some air and cool it off. Don't use water. That's old day stuff. Just use airline. Nothing rusts. You don't have to wait for anything to dry, and the air will actually pull the heat away from the weld really quickly. So, and you're not shocking it at all or anything. So if you just have your air hose right there, you lay a weld down, blast it with some air to cool that off, and then you can just move over and do another weld. So we're going to move on, like I said, over to making the braces. We're going to make those out of a little bit thicker material where the running boards attach, hopefully, and then we're going to make them a little bit longer because these fenders, both of them cracked in the same exact spot. So that's obviously a weak spot right there, so we're going to make them a little bit longer and have them wrap around inside the fender a little bit. So let's go ahead and get to that, and then we'll get those drilled and placed, and we'll have to drill the mounting holes for the running boards and get those other ones plug welded on here, and we'll this part will be done. Okay, we're going to go ahead and make these about 4.5 inches longer on this end down here, and I'm going to attempt to shape them around the shape of the fender inside there, and I don't know how much it's going to help, but it couldn't hurt, so that way it won't crack again later on. So all we're going to do is we got the mounting holes for the running boards, and then some of these holes are from the spot welds I drilled out. So first we're going to just draw the shape of this thing. We'll put the mounting holes in later. So I'm just going to use a Sharpie on here because I'm going to use an angle grinder to cut these out. And then I'm just going to extend this line out here another 4.5 inches from this point right here. And we're just going to keep going with a straight edge. And then once I get one cut out, I'll figure out how to lay the other one on here to reduce the amount of waste. And then we'll be good to go. So let me get that off there real quick. It's not super critical. So now we'll go 4.5 inches from the end. Looks like they had a little jog in theirs right there. I'll probably go ahead and knock that corner off or round it anyways. Make sure it fits inside there. So we're going to make one of these. We're going to cut out with the little cutoff blade on the angle grinder, and then we'll use that as a template to make the other one, and then we can see if we can shape it. I'll probably get the holes in it first for the mounting before we start bending it. It's flat for most of the way, and it had a little bit of curve in it. So these were really pretty flat laying up inside there. They just had a little bit of a curve on it, and then and then they were just spot welded in. So we're going to plug weld these onto the fender, so they'll be up in there real tight. All right, we're going to start just cutting this round and back over here. The big leg, we'll reposition it when it's time to cut the big long cut. Okay, I have the two pieces made, just cut them out with the angle grinder, ground the edges, hit it with a flapper disc, get all the rust off of it. These are longer, like I mentioned, than the other one. This is one of the originals. So I've got the holes marked out. I'm going to go ahead and get these drilled. I got them clamped together. I'll drill them both at the same time. And then we're going to start bending them to get them to match. I'll probably go and drill the fenders with the template that I made. Made this template before I cut the fenders off, the rusted parts off. So I have holes here, and this is the outside shape. So I can just hold that right up to the fender, mark the holes, drill them, and then when I'm bending these to match the radius inside the fender, I'll be able to use the holes in the fender as a reference, and even put a bolt in there to hold it as I bend it around to get it to fit right. So let's go ahead and get these drilled. And then we can move on to getting the fenders drilled in the right locations. Be using a step bit here. This is about a 1/4 inch hole on these. So I've got it marked right there. See if I can hit it without going over. Okay, so they're drilled. Now we need to lay out the fenders for the holes for the running boards. And then we can start bending these to fit. And then we can get the back side of the fender cleaned up and ready for some plug welding. The plug welding, I'll figure out where the holes I want to do for the plug welds, and then we'll drill those. They'll be way smaller than these. It's basically replicate a tack, a spot weld. So let's get over the fenders and get those laid out. Okay, let's get these holes laid out on here. A good little trick to hold up a template, a paper template, to sheet metal that you're working on is magnets. Learned this from the guys that wrap cars. Magnets make a great helping hand, especially on these radiuses where you got to make sure it's staying down on the radius as you go around. So we just wrap it around and stick these magnets on here. Then it gets me the chance to pull it back and forth and ensure that it's the right distance and there's no big wrinkles in it, like here. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to double check this. And once I mark these holes, I'm going to take the old bracket from behind that was spot welded behind it. I'm going to hold it up here to make sure everything's working out. I don't want to make a mistake, have to weld in a hole and re-drill it. And I certainly don't want to just over-drill the size. So I'm running my hand underneath here, and it feels really good. So I think we've got it, because I marked it from this side around to the bottom. I think I could come this way a little bit more. Stretch that over just a little bit more. Just like that. So we're just going to take the Sharpie and we're going to draw around the outside, leaving the hole in the center so I know where to aim the drill. And after I double check it with the bracket, I'm going to go ahead and hold the running board up there too, just to make sure everything looks right. Okay, got a couple of quarter 20 screws I use to hold fenders on this particular bracket here. I've got a little pile of them for different size applications. You can tell because they got paint all over them. It's got a little black metallic gray. This one's got orange on it. Whatever happened to paint last with them. All right. So that's up on there real good. And then we're going to bend this around the corner. I'm going to grab the squeeze clamp. We'll bring it over here. Pull that tight. Now we'll go around the other side and we'll see if we can't bend this around. Okay, so far the hole is lining up pretty good. Now there's a little twist that's going to go into this one because this fender rolls over and goes around the corner. So we're going to have to do a little hammering on this, probably stretch this or shrink this part, stretch this part out a little bit so it's got the right shape. It's not super critical, it's just going on the back of the fender, but I'd like it to lay as flat as possible. The old ones were actually out a little bit from the spot welds, and all it did was collect dirt and grease and road grime and water, obviously, and that just trapped it in there. So it just sat in there every time the truck drove through a puddle. It's just wet mud up inside there, and of course that's what ate through the steel. If it would have just ran off, it wouldn't have rusted through. So that trapped water is what really gets you. So this looks pretty good so far. I'm liking the way it's looking. It's going to take a little more bending to get it to go, but the holes are lining up really nice. And we're going to wrap around this corner. Remember I talked about there was a crack right here on both fenders, exactly in the same spot. So hopefully this will add a little rigidity to it and tie this together because the running board comes up right to here and kind of wraps around. And so that's kind of, this is really stiff and this is out here in the wind bending like this. So if I can do that, it'll tie it all together and hopefully keep this from vibrating and get another crack reoccurring. So I'm going to go ahead and bend this around a little bit off camera, and we're going to get it to fit, but hopefully we can get that shape in there real nice, get it to stay. Then we'll put it on the back side and then shape it a little bit more, and then we're ready to drill it and plug weld it on there. All right, got the, see if I can squeeze in here. I got the piece bent. Got some holes drilled for just plug welds. These would be, line this up. Fits pretty well. Took the flapper disc and knocked all the paint and everything else off of it. So we're going to throw some bolts in here to bolt it up and some clamps, and then make sure it fits well. And then we're going to get it plug welded. So let me get some bolts in here real quick. A couple of these small clamps. You can't reach around here. So I had to rebend this a couple of times, but it's fitting in there really. I can't even get my fingernail in there. So there's a little body line right here. I bent this back so it's not catching any dirt. Like I said earlier, this is all going to get like a bed liner sprayed underneath it on it after it's painted. So it's going to seal that up real nice. So shouldn't have a rust problem. Again, I can see where all my plug welds are. They're right tight up against the sheet metal. So that's really good. It seems like it's standing proud a little bit over here. I'm going to go ahead and clamp that down. Let me grab the welder and we'll hit the ones that are tight. I'll see if I can get a larger clamp over here. That's pulled away a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and get this welded. that's that. I'll grind these smooth, smooth it all out, and then that's going to be about it for this. Do the other side, the other fender just like this one, and then I'm going to hold up the, I'm actually going to try to hold up the running board, see how it fits on the fender, make sure there's no other problems with the running board. These fenders have been hit a couple of times, so I don't know if the running boards are actually aligned up to the fenders anymore. They may have just been pulled together with the bolts and not the right shape. So we're going to go and double check that before we get too involved in getting these fenders sweetened up and ready for paint. Okay, that wraps up part 2 of the patch panel videos. So we finished up everything we wanted to get done. I'm really happy the way they came out. So thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint and Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you.